Welcome to the Aviation Pros Podcast, the go-to platform for professionals in the aviation industry. Powered by AviationPros.com, the leading source for comprehensive news, insights, and data on airport operations. Whether you're focused on airport management, improvement programs, ground handling, equipment, MRO, or FBO operations, we've got you covered with the expertise and resources you need to stay ahead.
Hello, everyone. This is Jenny Lescohier. I'm the editor of Ground Support Worldwide, and today I am here with Robert Boroch, General Manager of ETC-PZL Aerospace. And welcome, Robert. It's nice to speak with you today. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for the introduction. I'm happy to participate in this podcast. Thank you for the invitation.
So to start with, why don't you tell us about the company and its offerings?
So our company exists on the market for 35 years, and we are based in Poland, but we are part of American group ETC. We have profound experience in flight simulations, in simulation for Air Force, for military, different applications, as well as driving simulations. Actually, what we can say that we have a very wide simulation experience that we currently try to implement in helping aviation sector, especially ground aviation.
So your company promotes the idea of from compliance to readiness. What does that mean in practical terms for airport ground handling operations today?
It's like historically the training was measured by auditing attendance lists. But the question we need to arise is to participate in the training the same, like fully learning everything that was lectured and understanding all the issues and the procedures. I think it's not. Just to own the certificate, it's not enough to perform perfectly in very stressed and environment that's very highly collaborative and is very much happening under pressure. This is, I think, very important to understand because the traditional training methods were developed many, many years ago when the tension on the airport was much lower. There was much less traffic, and the complexity of all systems was also smaller. Currently, as many airports are coming closer to their capacity limits, they are extending, which is also causing some organizational disruptions. I think classroom sessions, annual reviews, sometimes maybe even happening not every year, but every 3 years, in my opinion, is absolutely not enough. The confirmation for this we find out in FAA data that says that approximately 70% of aviation accidents are estimated to involve human factors. Why is it so much then if training is perfect? An incident is rarely the question of human factor alone. Quite often it's a systematic issue. And the errors are happening not due to one person, but often it is a cascade effect. As we understand, with higher traffic volumes and higher complexity of airport as a system, of course, we need to find some newer, some better, some more efficient training methods, as those designed in the past seem not to be enough. And what we also see based on data, that after COVID, the workforce did not come to the amount or to the numbers like before, which is happening, which is causing the situation that people are overloaded because we have more job to do and less staff. The ground damage cost in the industry, according to IATA data, is estimated to be $4.8 billion annually. Of course, when we count a single incident cost of millions, I don't think that just training to be compliant, standard classroom training is enough.
I understand. That is some sobering statistics. With simulation, how are some of those gaps that you've described closed? I mean, taking today's modern training methods and comparing them to legacy systems, can you explain how it kind of closes those gaps?
Simulation as a method is not a new technology like we often speak. For decades, is used by the pilots. And actually for pilots, it's official and obligatory training method. The question is, why then ground aviation shall be treated differently than pilots? Simulation has proven to limit the number of flying aviation incidents tremendously. Why don't we try this? Why don't we use it just on the ground? Which is also proven in army to be effective method, in police forces to be effective method, as well as for pilots. In my opinion, the simulation is so useful because it's very much immersive environment, is allowing to try some situations that are complex to try in real life. It's much more effective, much more cheaper, and much more easy to plan, which means we can schedule every time bad weather, we can schedule every time low visibility, and train people in real conditions, which is absolutely impossible in real life, because when you employ a driver in summer, of course you give him all the trainings in summer, but then low visibility comes, winter comes, everything is slippery, visibility is lower, people are under stress, and then, of course, errors happen. So, in my opinion, of course, also the aspect of growing number of personnel to be trained also requires simulation to be used, because you can train and easily prepare people in simulation before they can even gain access to the airside. You can shorten the training by using new technology like microlearning, and you can improve the retention, not only the knowledge gained. It could help us to lower the training cycle, to shorten the training cycle. It could make the training more practical without bringing any risk to the airside. The training quality would get improved because we could train some things that are absolutely impossible in real life. They are too dangerous or they are too expensive. And by repeating the training using micro-learning apps or even simulation training between the yearly or 3-yearly refreshment, we could extend the retention. And of course, the most important aspect for me is the standardization. Currently, very much the training depends on the trainer, and not all the trainers are well motivated, and not all of them are the best. Having this new technology supporting training, we could standardize this much better way, and the results would be better and more effective, cheaper.
Can you explain the emphasis on interdisciplinary and team-based simulation training rather than just individual skills training? Why is that collaborative aspect becoming more important in airport operation?
Of course, the training of each personnel separately is very much essential. But airport or airside is a very much collaborative environment where thousands of people are moving in the same time, being responsible for different jobs. But if they fail in one place, it will have a cascade impact on the other place. Either the flow is disturbed or some safety risks are propagating. That's why it's very much important to bring the team of people and to train them in difficult situations, in demanding scenarios, but train them to communicate, train them to collaborate, train them to catch each other's mistake, train them to survive this difficult situation together in stressful conditions under pressure. This is also passing the message to the team that safety is a collaborative responsibility. And it's absolutely not enough. When 100 people know their job and they live in the silos, it's important that they work as a team, like in real life, also during training.
You just mentioned the team aspect and working with the people that you will be working with in real life. There must be quite a benefit to having individuals start to understand the other individuals and their unique strengths and weaknesses, right? I mean, is that part of the process, is kind of a team building exercise, if you will?
It's absolutely important because the people keep communicating, and the statistics is showing that most of aviation accidents are happening due to miscommunication. That we assume too much, but we know not enough. And that's important between the pilot and the pushback operator, between the pilot and the controller, or maybe even sometimes between two pilots flying one airplane. We had many accidents in the past where even the pilots sitting in the same cockpit did not understand each other, and they were directing the machine in different sides. As it's happening for the pilots sitting in the same cockpit, how much bigger is the probability of misunderstandings in such a complex environment like a handling company or even the whole airport? The group training is essential, and currently it's extremely difficult to do. You don't close airport, you don't rent an airplane just to train all the people serving the airplane, the stairs, the pushback, the petrol vehicle, the lavatory truck. Of course, they try to train, but in real conditions. But what happens if somebody makes a mistake? That is a tragic mistake. In isolated training environment where we could train groups, we could train communication and all very difficult scenarios like malfunctions or mistakes. One person does a mistake, we see what the team is doing. This would very much help to elevate performance to much higher level in normal operations.
How can simulation technologies help ground handlers bring employees up to speed faster while still improving the safety and competency?
Simulation-based training methods accelerate onboarding because training can start without waiting for the apron access. We know that in many countries, the procedure to get apron access, the airport access, takes some weeks, even in some places, even some months due to safety reasons. Of course, there is a question of trainer amount. Some airports just don't have enough trainers because they use trainers that have different jobs in the same time, and they are not always free for each person to train. It's a question of vehicle availability, equipment availability, of course the weather, we cannot plan it in normal training, and the right operational window. We know handling company where pushback operator is trained for 3 months. But what is he doing during training? Mostly he's waiting because he has to make 15 barless and 15 bar pushback operations. And the 3 months is mostly waiting time for him to have opportunity to make this pushback operation. Using simulation method, we could have him do 20, 50, even 100 pushback operations a day, which would, of course, allow him to make mistakes. It would allow him to understand the consequences of his mistakes. It would allow the trainer to show him tips and tricks, and he would be much better prepared. But of course, it's just an example of the pushback operator. But when we speak about normal drivers that have to operate under pressure, they have to communicate with one radio or two radios, and they have to come as fast as possible to the other part of the airport. But how to come fast if you just feel strange, is not your normal environment, is your second or third day or week at work? Of course, they get lost. When they get lost, they get stressed. Somebody's shouting on them in radio, but it doesn't help. It just makes the pressure higher, and then the brain is working slower and slower. We could, in simulation method, train such a driver, letting him drive without any stress and any consequences, just to learn the topography of the airport. Then he could start with learning signs, rules, lines, and then radio communication. Just radio communication with the tower, or maybe then team radio communication, where some employees have even language problem. And in radio, there is a lot of noises, not always communication is clear, and of course, this brings stress high. If they learn in simulation method, in isolated environment, and they get complexity of scenario more and more complex. They could get used to normal environment, and when they come to the real airport training on the air side, they will be much more effective, less stress, which would also probably extend their retention, because people are stressed and low paid. They don't like such a job. Of course, such a training also lowers the petrol cost. We don't need so many vehicles. We bring the risk low, because people that that are not good on simulation training, maybe we just don't let them at all to the airside. Maybe we need also some filter to make sure that all candidates are good enough to work on real airside, because maybe for some psychological reasons, some people on the airside is just risk.
I was thinking about that while you were talking, that there probably are just some individuals who are not geared for this environment. And are there gates, if you will, to filter through candidates to make sure that somebody is properly geared from a natural standpoint of the way their brain works for this type of work? Is there any kind of test for that?
I say the test is there, but the test is very expensive. What we know from many handling companies, from our customers, that some people apply for a job in a handling company, and after a week or two, they resign because this job is just too heavy for them. They don't like standing outside in summer or winter, which means that those 2 weeks is not well invested, because they are hired, they are trained, but later they quit. With simulation method, we could show them much earlier, or maybe before they are employed, how this job looks like and how stressful it could be. But this is the lower problem, because it's only the cost. Imagine there is some person that's a bit crazy, but very much motivated. This person will not quit because of difficulties. This person will stay. Then, under the supervision, it will behave correctly, but later it will not be safe, because there are some people that follow the rules, and there are some people that are very creative. They try to follow their own rules and procedures. Those are pure risk. With the simulation scenarios, we could fish them much before they create danger, before they create accident, and before they are eliminated. Why to have them there from the beginning?
Looking ahead, how do you see technologies like VR and AI-driven analytics and immersive simulation changing the way airports approach workforce development?
The question is if technology can change the airport management, or airport management is primarily responsible for the training outcome, and airport management will just use proper technology to support their training goals. Sounds provoking, but actually I believe is very much true. The simulation technology, as we discussed, is a mature technology, is proven in aviation and in many different segments of life. VR, or a simulator with a screen, is finally something different and in some way similar, because in both cases the software is creating the virtual reality where we are immersed, and when we have goggles, it's just different display system put on our head. If we have monitor in front of us, of course the software result, the visualization, the virtual reality is displayed on the monitor. But both is software-based solution. The software itself could be very helpful and can bring a revolution to training, making training much wider, better, more ecologic, and much more effective, shorter and cheaper over long term. But just to buy one simulator for big airport is not enough to change anything, because we know some customers, they have big expensive simulator, but one for many thousands of drivers. Of course, those drivers don't see the simulator even through the window. Such a simulator will not change the culture. Such a simulator is not accessible for people and will not be widely used for the bigger population. It will be kind of technology toy that make a nice signal that we as airport, we as a handling company use simulation, but will not be effective at all. What needs to be done as a condition that those training methods are really accessible for the people, that people have time, dedicated time to use it, to enjoy this, to learn from their own mistakes, because adults are learning different than children. They have to do their own mistakes. They improve understanding of the situation. They try what works, what doesn't work, and based on this, they draw their own conclusions. Children like much more when we tell them what to do, but adults don't. So I believe that the simulation-based technologies and AI-driven analytics will change the future of airports, but only for airports where management takes responsibility for their own people and use the technology properly.
You said something a minute ago that made me think of, you talked about the way adults learn versus the way children learn. But even across adults, some people are visual learners, some people are auditory learners, and some are more hands-on. Does this system account for those differences?
Yes. First, when you start with some new job, you need to learn some kind of theory. Of course, we love to start with practical things, but there are some basics we need to learn. But even when we learn something about theory, it's nice that this learning material is scenario-based, is topic-focused, and is interesting. The next, what's very important, that it customizes to each person according to his learning progress. Such qualities has our micro-learning application that is delivering knowledge in scenario-based method with smaller pieces for everyday training. This not only helps to gain knowledge, but also to gain skills and get easier with future decision-making process, because we learn to solve the problems and not learn the rules by heart. A lot of people know the rules by heart, but they don't know the meaning of the rules. And when they get stressed, they forget something, and as they never understood, they cannot remind, they cannot use the knowledge they have. Then when we have VR module, for example, for some safety walk around, this becomes more practical, but is still theory-based. Practical because I see the object in front of me, I can touch it, I can open something, I can check, but still there is a theoretical-based guidance in which order I shall do some things, and if I do mistakes, I learn why this was not good. Finally, in the simulation, I can get very much practical, not only about the buttons and this what I do, but I have outside situation that is influencing me, requires a lot of decision from myself, and if I make the mistake, I can really understand why, and I can repeat the situation again to see what happens if I make something according to the procedure. I can actually compare that it's really better to make according to the procedure. But I can also try to make my own way and see why it doesn't work. But training is one thing. If it is theoretical, practical, or on the job, the simulation will be always support for a real training, because it cannot fully replace the on-the-job training, but it can prepare the people much better and make on-the-job training much more effective than deeper and cheaper.
So are airports and handlers becoming more receptive to this type of investment? How would you characterize that?
They are a different group of customers. Some of them believe, when I was young, I didn't have such a toys, so why the young people now should have access to them? When I learned, everything was different, and I learned well, so we don't need any change. Other people speak that they need to think about simulation methods and new training technology because the new generation is coming. But actually, it's not true. New generation is there. Average age of gamer in Poland is currently 35 years old, which means that the new generation is already employed And there is nothing to wait for the new generation coming. We need to act today. And there are some customers where the management is more target-oriented with the wider perspective. And those see the training not as a cost, they see the training as an investment. And then they see the training budget linked to the operational budget. As you invest more in training, the people will be more relaxed doing the job with higher quality. The retention will be better, a satisfaction of employee will be better, and the environment will be safer. But you need to wait some time from the decision you take about investment to the system to be introduced, then let a lot of people go through the training system, maybe not once, and wait for the result. For the result that is sure it will be good, because for pilots it's standard and it's proven. But if managers are afraid to invest today and they expect quick results tomorrow, they will fail. But not due to technology, due to lack of patience and lack of vision.
My next question was going to be about measurable ROI, but it almost kind of sounds like what you're saying is it's not the kind of thing that you can pinpoint with numbers immediately. It's an evolution, right? It's going to take some time and some commitment and faith that it's going to work, right? Or are there measurements where you can see how much of an impact this type of training is having?
There are different data about this, but I'd like to repeat the example I gave you before. 3 months, the pushback operator may wait for the real-life opportunity to make 30 pushback operations. We can make it in 1 week. So comparing 1 week to 12 weeks, or maybe 2 weeks to 12 weeks, because of course he has to make some real pushbacks, we could improve, we could shorten the time by some 80%. It's a lot. But shortening the time as a ROI measure is only one side of the medal. But what if using simulation methods or microlearning methods joined with simulation, we could make training richer of the scenarios that can never be trained in real life? What is the ROI? If I can train something that in real life cannot be trained, if I could train people in stressful situation, in collaborative environment, they have never time or never opportunity to train. I don't know what is the ROI for such a case, but who takes the responsibility for not training that? I mean, the total cost of accidents are 4.8 billions, and surely part of this could be saved. Hundreds of millions could be saved worldwide. We had different feedbacks from our customers. We have currently 7 pilots deployment across Poland, and we are this year preparing to do 8 additional implementations. The feedback is very clear. More and more airports and more handling companies really want to change something about safety. They fully realize the traffic is growing, the staff is less, and they want to use new technology because they absolutely believe in the positive impact. ROI is very high.
So finally, what do you see coming in the future? Do you see more development of this type of technology? Where could it lead?
I would dream that people start talking about simulation as a new technology. I dream about a situation where the ground aviation is treated by FAA and other regulators the same like the flying aviation. Because for the flying aviation, if the pilot does not make simulator unit, he could lose the license to fly. Why then on the ground, where also safety is created, we don't use the same? I believe it's not fair, and I hope that a lot of management from airports and handling company will try to speak with FAA or improve their organizations to bring these lessons learned from the aviation pilot training in the ground aviation. This is my hope, and I believe it would let us save a lot of money and improve the flow of operations. That's very important.
It is. Thank you very much, Robert. This has been very interesting. I hope you'll keep us posted as things develop, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Aviation Pros Podcast. Stay ahead in airport operations and leadership by subscribing to our Airport Business Daily Newsletter, your go-to source for the latest industry insights. And don't forget to explore even more at AviationPros.com, the home of exclusive content for aviation professionals like you. I'm Joe Petrie. We'll catch you next time.